again, Packer fans. Welcome back to the Atrium at GreenBayPackerNation.com. Today is Wednesday, October 28th, and of course, Packer fans have forgotten all about the Cleveland Browns. We are now whole hog into the huge upcoming game, Packers versus the Vikings at Lambeau Field. So, we're casting all other thoughts aside tonight, and we're going to be talking to you in depth and purely and simply about this Viking game. So stick around. This is the Atrium at GreenBayPackerNation.com. Well, I got rid of all of my notes. I may pick up the paper here just to look at the injury report for the Vikings, but we're going to talk about this Vikings game all the time tonight. That's all we're going to talk about. As far as I'm concerned, the Cleveland game no longer exists. There is a certain measure of confidence that our Green Bay Packer team has going into this game due to a couple of good games against a couple of bad teams. But right now it's all about the division game, chance to bring ourselves even with the Vikings with a division lead, splitting the division rivalry, and having a chance to take into the second, third quarters of this season a chance to lead our division and work our way toward that division championship, which is so important, and get ourselves into the playoffs. Now, with that, saying that, I'm thinking very far ahead, but of course I do want to start with some generals. I do want to talk about the importance of this game. It has more to do with just Brett Favre coming back to Lambeau Field to play against his former teammates. Of course, that's an important storyline. Plenty of people are going to be covering it. About a couple things I wanted to say about it, because I don't want to talk about Brett Favre too much. I know there's sensory overload about the whole Brett Favre thing. So a couple things I do want to mention. One is tongue-in-cheek. I would love it if the Packers took Brett Favre's old locker and put it in the visitors' locker room for him to use when he came to Lambeau Field. I think that would be so cool to just bring it in there and have his old locker. This is where we're putting it now, and then just leave it there. And then just take the cameras in there weeks later. It's still just hanging around growing cobwebs. Brett Favre's locker in the visitors' locker room at Lambeau Field. The irony would be fantastic. But that is a serious point that Brett Favre now, coming into Lambeau with all the familiarity that he had for 16 years, is now going to be sitting in that visitors' locker room. It's going to be different for him. He has a tendency to get nervous in games. He has a tendency also, as we have seen, to, if he has to pass a lot early in games, to aim a little high, to get a little wild. Unfortunately, with a team like the Vikings, and I see Brad Childress in particular handing the ball off to Adrian Peterson until Brett Favre gets warmed up. Now, our defense, on the other hand, can take that option away if first and second down puts you in a 3rd and 10 situation or a 3rd and 8 situation. Those quickly will become passing downs, as the Vikings do know they're going to need to score against this high-powered Green Bay offense. So, Vikings coming to town. Let me tell you what the injury situation is in the Vikings side of the ball. Since most of us are fairly aware of what the Green Bay Packers are going through, I'll go over that as well. But here's what's going on with the Vikings, since you may not be up to date on this. Antoine Winfield did not participate. E.J. Henderson did not participate, and Bernard Berrien did not participate. So those are 3 starters. Antoine Winfield in that backfield, Pro Bowler, I believe, very physical player, and a very astute player back there. The Vikings showed their defensive backfield is weak when Antoine Winfield is watching the game from the sideline. So we will keep up to date on that. It will be interesting to see. I don't believe Winfield is going to play in this game, but I have not heard more than that he did not participate. Also, E.J. Henderson, their inside linebacker, one of their linebackers anyway, very potent player. If he is not able to go, that will make a big difference for the Green Bay Packers in terms of, I think, our running game. Where are the numbers going to be for Ryan Grant? That's going to be important for us. E.J. Henderson, very good tackler, another physical defensive player. Bernard Berrien, on the offensive side of the ball, a wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. If he can't go, I think it will hamper the Vikings a little bit, but it's not quite as big of a deal. Remember, this is, again, a team that begins and ends with Adrian Peterson. So our defenses, their game planning begins and to some extent ends with Adrian Peterson. You try to get Adrian Peterson taken care of, force the offense to become sort of one-dimensional. Then you can focus on your protection or your pressure schemes versus Brett Favre. So, and speaking of Brett Favre is also on the Vikings injury list this week with a hip problem. I've got a notion that his Iron Man streak of starts will not end due to this hip problem, but he was a limited participation in practice this week. So we'll see how that goes. Most of you are familiar with what's going on with the Packers organization. Of course, Mark Tauscher is one of those guys. Is he going to make the field? Is he not? He's coming off a very serious knee injury. I think they're going to be careful with him. This is a Packer organization that is always smart about injuries. Although you have noticed, if you've been listening to the press conferences, Jermichael Finley, this Packer organization wants Jermichael Finley on the field this week. He is a big part of their game plan, as he was when we began the game at the Metrodome. Coach McCarthy today said it may be as late as Sunday morning for Jermichael Finley to get a workout, go out, see how that sprained knee feels. But Saturday, Sunday morning, they are going to work him out. They are trying, and in the meantime, they are rehabbing this guy to try to get him ready to play on Sunday. Of course, he brings a certain his unique abilities. The guy's 6'5". He has really turned it on of late. Aaron Rodgers and he are really hitting it off. They seem to be very much in sync. He gives defenses a lot to think about. He gives linebackers just all sorts of problems, and he gives our offense a distinct advantage. So I would love to see Jermichael Finley on the field. I thought it was a big loss. When I saw that his cleat was not engaged with the turf when he took the hit, I was hoping that it would just be a bruise. But apparently what happened was the tackler drove through his knee and snapped it forward and then sprained the knee. Or it did catch a slight bit, get a little bit of drag, and sprain. So this is, this is not a devastating injury, but this is an injury that a lot of times he might sit out a week or two for, but they are chomping at the bit to get Jermichael Finley on the field.